Hi everyone, Dr. Henry from Pain Free and Fit. Today, part 2 of our Bulgarian split squat with posterior pelvic tilting for those of you with low back spondylolisthesis pain trying to train yourselves to avoid extension to prevent pain and injury. Hope you enjoy. So building on the theme that we discussed in the last video, part 1, posterior pelvic tilting for spondylolisthesis, or tilting the pelvis so that the pubic bone moves upwards and the tailbone moves under, flattens the lower back and many times reduces pain and aggravation of spondylolisthesis because as we posterior pelvic tilt, the arch or the curve in the back, the lordosis, decreases. That opens up the available space for the facet joints in the back of the spine as well as the posterior aspect of the disc and prevents the mechanical force of the spondylolisthesis vertebra moving more forward with anterior pelvic tilting, which is common for many people with spondylolisthesis because of tight hip flexor muscles and posture irregularities. Now, not all cases of spondylolisthesis in the lower back are aggravated with extension, but most are. If you have an extension problem, if you've done an in-depth analysis on your biomechanics as it relates to your spinal stability and pain, you probably have already figured out what a neutral spine is. If you're not sure what your mechanics are, go to the painfreeandfit.com website. We have a free body analysis. It'll at least help you get started with understanding how your posture, your movement habits, your muscle asymmetries, your core problems with stability muscles all relate to your mechanical lower back spondylolisthesis pain. So for this exercise, we're going to build on the concept that in a Bulgarian split squat, where the leg is behind us on a bench and we're moving up and down, the further we move down, the more the pelvis wants to tilt anteriorly, the more that tailbone wants to move up and the curve in the lower back wants to increase. That's going to be increased also the further the leg goes back. We discussed this in part 1. So the challenge is keeping that posterior pelvic tilt as we do our split squat, is maintaining that neutral spine with the RPI, reverse posture isometric. Because the deeper we go, the more that leg stretches back and the more our arch wants to occur. So we have to go against that or meet that challenge with maintaining our core ability to maintain a neutral spine. Now, for this exercise, we're going to make that more difficult because we're going to make a band pull our pelvis into more of an anterior pelvic tilt. I positioned a band above and behind me so that the angle of pull, if I hook that band at the top of my thighs under my groin, the angle of pull on that band is going to want to additionally cause an anterior pelvic tilt. So that's even more tension for my abdominal muscles and my hamstrings to put me into a posterior pelvic tilt where I tilt that tailbone under and resist the band. So this is an intermediate stage of what we learned last time with a non-band split squat. We're going to begin by putting ourselves into a neutral pelvic tilt position. Again, if you've never done that with spondylolisthesis, you simply tilt the tail up into an anterior pelvic tilt slowly until you start to feel a little discomfort in the back. That would be one extreme of motion. Then you'd tilt the tail under in a posterior pelvic tilt until you feel a little pull somewhere in the lower back. That would be the opposite extreme of motion. Then you want to position your pelvic tilt or tailbone under midway between those two extremes. That's your neutral spine in terms of posterior pelvic tilting. Now, you may need to additionally, and most do, need to increase that neutral spine with, let's say, a correction of your pelvis in terms of lateral or sideways motion, your rib cage, torquing or twisting your rib cage or your pelvis, and then you're going to put your RPI tension, your core muscle corrections for what the problem is. For me, that's my left multifidus. For you, that may be an internal oblique that needs to be relaxed, an external oblique that needs to be contracted, a latissimus muscle that needs to be contracted or relaxed. It all depends on your unique mechanics. So once you get your full neutral spine, not just posterior pelvic tilting set, we get into the position. We'll put one leg forward, one leg back. The band is trying to pull my pelvis more into an anterior pelvic tilt, and as I descend, I maintain that posterior pelvic tilt tension. The lower I go, that band is stretching, the pelvis wants to be pulled into an anterior pelvic tilt. I'm resisting that with abdominal tension and maintaining my RPI. I keep my hand behind me in the lower back to make sure I maintain that RPI, and that's a great way to not only increase thigh and hip strength and resist the anterior pelvic tilting tendency, with the leg behind you, but now you're using the band to create even more abdominal and more core stability and tension to prevent that anterior pelvic tilting. If you like this video on posterior pelvic tilting Bulgarian split squats with additional band at the hips, check out our channel. We got a lot of great videos out there to help you. Questions or comments, write in. I'll do my best as always to answer. And remember, if you're looking for a great spondylolisthesis program that helps you figure out what your mechanical issues are, how to go through a full body analysis on your mechanics, your posture, your movement asymmetries, your muscle imbalances, figure out how to correct them and tailor fit a customized healing rehabilitative exercise program for you to get you out of pain and back into sports and support the healing of your spondylo pain, check out our fast track program for spondylolisthesis available at painfreeandfit.com. I hope this tutorial on posterior pelvic tilting with Bulgarian split squats with an added band at the hips helps you with your chronic low back spondylolisthesis pain.